now that we have seen the sniper scope in action / the light rifle, let's talk about the pros and cons, and I'm gonna start with the negative stuff first. And the first issue / drawback that I had with the sniper scope is the D-pad / the mini stick right here, because it's not really that responsive. I had a lot of troubles with it. Now left, right and down worked okay, but in terms of pushing up, 1 out of maybe 6 times it would actually recognize that I push up. So I had a lot of troubles maneuvering around the menus and configurations and everything. This was actually not that good on the sniper rifle, or sniper scope, sorry. But even though I didn't show it in the video, I also tested the other one, the stealth scope, and I also tested the sniper scope twice, once on my 100 Hz TV and another time on my other TV, which has 50 Hz. And yeah, when it comes to the stealth scope, the mini stick / D-pad worked a lot better. So this might be just an issue on my version of the sniper scope, but overall I had some few issues in the game, especially in sniper scope, in silent scope, because sometimes it was hard for me to aim at targets that were on the far left side of the screen, and especially when the magnification was turned on. So I had to remove my head so that the magnification would turn off. Then I'd aim roughly at the target, and then I could turn on the magnification / look through the scope, and then it worked. So in the end, on the stealth scope, the D-pad was a lot better / the mini stick, but the performance in the game was better actually with the sniper scope. And this is also one of the reasons, at least in my opinion and / in my situation, that if you are interested after this video for buying one of those light rifles, I would personally recommend that you try to find the sniper scope instead of the stealth scope, because number one, it has the advantage of the 100 Hz ability, that you also can use it on 100 Hz CRT TVs, and the second thing is that I had a better performance in the game with the sniper scope instead of the stealth scope. So this was that. Other drawbacks is that, yeah, the extra functions that you have, auto fire, auto reload and burst, they are kind of cool, but in the end, yeah, they are almost useless. In the case of silent scope, they are completely useless because this game doesn't really support those things. Number one, the game reloads the magazine automatically, so you don't need the auto reload function. And in terms of burst and auto fire, in the game silent scope, you play a professional sniper, and he also has a professional sniper rifle. And most of the sniper rifles are, I guess you call them repeating rifles, because you make a shot, you reload / repeat, make another shot until the magazine is empty, and then you take another magazine and yeah, go from there on. So the auto fire function doesn't really work because it's the same thing in the game. You make a shot, he repeats / reloads the gun, and so on. And also the same thing with the burst. You can't shoot 3 times at once. So in the end, a sniper rifle is not really made to shoot rapidly. That's why those functions are completely useless in the case of silent scope. In the case of House of the Dead 3, it's a little bit different. Now the burst, 3 shots at a time, it works, and also the auto fire works also pretty good. I guess you can shoot a lot faster than the function itself, but like I said, it works, and if you have a longer gaming session or whatever, then it's a lot easier on the fingers, and you just pull the trigger once and you have auto fire instead of just always pushing on the button. But the auto reload function is actually not necessary. Number one, also in the game House of the Dead 3, you have already an automatic reload function. So every time you run out of bullets, the game reloads the weapon for you. And also, since you have already the pump action, if you want, you can use it. So it's a lot cooler than using an auto reload function. Okay, this was that. Then The next thing that I wanted to mention is my personal issue with this rifle, and this issue or worry that I have is with the kickback function and with the pump action. Now about the kickback function, I personally don't like the kickback functions on any of the Lightgun controllers. I always test them because I want to see if maybe I find one kickback function that I really like or anything, but it didn't happen before and I don't think that it will ever happen in the future. Personally, or basically what I don't like is they totally feel like a toy. They sound like a toy, they feel like a toy, and in the end, yeah, the kickback that you get, it is nice, it is a nice feature. I don't say anything against it, basically, but I personally don't like it. The kickback function is cute, but in the end, it doesn't even come near the real experience of a kickback from a real weapon. Not that I want a kickback function that is as strong as on a real weapon or anything, but when it comes to kickback functions on light guns, my personal opinion is less is sometimes more. So I'm glad that you actually have an on and off switch and you can turn off the kickback function. And when it comes to the pump action, it is cool, but it feels kind of weird because the way how far you can push back on the kickback function is too short in my opinion, so it feels a little weird. It would be a lot cooler if you would have a longer way for this mechanism to work, but yeah, maybe that is also just my opinion, but in the end, when it comes to the pump action and also the kickback, my worry that I have is, since those are moving parts, if anything starts to break on this light rifle, it might be the kickback first or the pump action first, or maybe even both together. So this is my personal issue / drawback that I wanted to include and mention, but yeah, for other people it might be totally okay. The next issue that I have is actually not with the controllers, or it's not the fault of the controllers, and that is the one issue that I already mentioned in the game, or in the case of Silent Scope. It's really, yeah, a pain in the ass, let's call it like that, to that you have to turn up the brightness so high that you can actually use those light rifles and get a good performance out of them. It's not unplayable or anything, but it's still, it takes away a little bit from the experience, and also sometimes it can be hard to recognize smaller targets on the screen. So this is really a pain in the ass, and but in the end it's not the fault of the light gun, since in the case of House of the Dead 3 you don't have to crank up the brightness or anything. And also after some research online I found out that everybody else had the same issue with Silent Scope Complete, so it must be a programming issue. Now the last thing that I also wanted to make, which is also not a problem of the light rifle or a drawback of the light rifle, is the fact only 3 titles were released for the Microsoft Xbox that actually have a light gun support. You have Silent Scope Complete, you have House of the Dead 3, and the third title is Starsky and Hutch. And this is actually more driving game, where you also have the ability to shoot at enemies, bad guys, whatever, and you can decide if you want to play it, if you want to play this with the controller, with the regular controller, or if you want to play it also with a light gun. But in the end, there are just 3 titles. Also, I think it's a shame that on Untitled Legends, for instance, you also get the games Operation Wolf and Operation Thunderbolt, and they also have no light gun support. But as I mentioned before, technically the original games were radar shooters, but in the end, yeah, this is also really a shame that they didn't include the light gun support for those games. To be fair, if you buy Silent Scope Complete, you get all the 4 Silent Scope games that are available: Silent Scope, Silent Scope 2, Fatal Judgment, Silent Scope 3 and Silent Scope FX. And if you play House of the Dead 3 and you beat the game, you unlock House of the Dead 2. So in total, actually there are 7 games on the Microsoft Xbox that support a light gun. in the end it's still not a lot, and I know there are some other systems out there where you have almost the same number of light gun shooters or maybe even less, but in the end, in my opinion, I would say that also on those systems you might you got a lot more variety of those light gun shooters than in the case of the original Xbox. So this is also one thing that I want to mention, which is also a drawback, but not from, or let's say it's not a drawback of those light rifles. Okay, this was basically the bad stuff. Let's come to the positive stuff / the good stuff, advantages. And the very first thing that I want to mention is that the controllers are very well built. It feels like they are very well built, even though, like I mentioned before, I have a worry that the kickback function and also the pump action will break first, if they will ever break. Like I said, they feel very good in your hands. If calculated, if rightly calculated, you get a very good performance and they can be very accurate. This is also pretty cool. And yeah, also in terms of size, you get a very good weight with this controller. It's not too heavy, it's not too light or anything, so it really has a nice weight to it, which is good and can be also an issue if you have longer gaming sessions or anything, and for instance you play House of the Dead with the normal, or yeah, without the extra parts or anything. If you play longer sessions, then since it is bigger than a normal light gun and it's also slightly heavier than a normal light gun, your arms get tired faster. And this is also one of the reasons when it comes to playing House of the Dead 3, I still prefer playing it with my light gun that I have right here. This is the Beretta from Thrustmasters. This is also a really cool, well-made light gun. It doesn't have a kickback function. I don't need the kickback function, but yeah, also this one is very well built and has a very nice weight to it, but since it's smaller, it's not as heavy as this one, and this is also the reason why I prefer playing House of the Dead 3 to whatever on the Microsoft Xbox with this one, but I just wanted to mention it. Okay, but in the end, yeah, if you play House of the Dead 3 or Silent Scope with the Stealth Scope or the Sniper Scope, you get the best home arcade experience that you can get with those light rifles. So this is another thing that I want to mention, which is very positive / an advantage of those light rifles. So overall, I think personally the light rifles work pretty good, even though with the issue of Silent Scope, but in the end it's the best way to play Silent Scope actually. And yeah, when it comes to if I would recommend it, which I'm gonna tell you later on, but just right now I still would recommend those games if you are a fan of light gun shooters, especially on the Microsoft Xbox. Okay, but now let's talk about the PlayStation 2 version, which I also have mentioned in the beginning that the PlayStation 2 also got a version of this one. I don't really know how which name the PlayStation 2 version got, if it's also called Stealth Scope or Sniper Scope. Sorry, this is something that I don't know right now. But when the sniper rifle / the light rifle was released for the PlayStation 2, they made a couple of changes. And to explain all those changes, I take the Sniper Scope as a reference. Now, first what they changed was the colors. And here on the Sniper Scope we have almost the entire body of the Sniper Scope has a dark gray finish, and you have some light gray parts, and all the buttons and the muzzle have a green color. Now the PlayStation 2 version, all the dark gray color parts are black, the light gray parts are the same, and all the buttons and the muzzle are blue. Then one other thing that they changed was, of course, the color scheme, not the color scheme, sorry, the button layout, since the PlayStation 2 has different buttons, or the controller has different buttons than the Xbox controller. And what they also changed was on those extra functions. You have on the Xbox version you have normal, auto fire, auto reload and burst, and on the PlayStation 2 version you have normal, auto reload, auto fire, and the last function instead of burst is called TCAF, which stands for Time Crisis Auto Fire. And one of the reasons why they include this function was because the PlayStation 2 version was specially advertised for the game Time Crisis Free. And what this function does is that, as far as I know, because I had to research it because I don't have it, and from what I've understand is that in the game Time Crisis Free, the weapon that you have as the player has 9 bullets inside the magazine. And if you play or if you use the extra function auto reload, the gun will reload after you've fired 6 shots instead of 9. And if you have it on the Time Crisis auto fire mode, it will reload the gun after 9 bullets instead of after 6 bullets. And another thing is that if you have it on the Time Crisis setting, you can use the pump action function to use the cover function of the Time Crisis games. And you can also use this function if you use the A, or if you press the A or the B button. But the difference is that if you use the A or the B button, you basically turn off the auto fire function, and when you use the pump action mechanism, you still have the auto fire function. This is what I figured out when I read this article online. So this is the reason why they have the Time Crisis auto fire function. Now, another thing that they changed was that here on the back the memory cartridge slot was removed, which is pretty normal since on the PlayStation 2 you have the memory cartridge slots on the system itself and not like on the Xbox on the controller. And the last thing that they changed, which is really a bummer, is they removed the motion sensor on the back of the light rifle. Now, why would you remove the motion sensor on this rifle, which was specifically designed for the game Silent Scope? Well, the reason is because the games, the Silent Scope games that were released for the PlayStation 2, I have part 1 and part 2, I miss part 3, they don't support light guns. So you can't use the light rifle on the games, at least on the PlayStation 2, which is also really a shame. But yeah, this is basically the PlayStation 2 version in a nutshell. Yeah, one thing that I forgot to mention is that I know that they released 2 different versions of the PlayStation 2 version. One of those versions has a kickback function and the other one came without a kickback function. I don't actually know if if one of those versions, or if they had a third version that actually could be used on 100 Hz CRT TVs, because the 2 versions that I saw, that I found online, didn't have a 100 Hz function. So yeah, this was basically the PlayStation 2 version of the light rifle. Now, I also mentioned in the beginning that the first Silent Scope game was also released for the Game Boy Advance and the Dreamcast. And I've heard a rumor that there were some plans to release a light rifle for the Dreamcast with a built-in LCD screen in the scope like the arcade machine had. But I actually don't know if this rumor is true or not. In the end, it actually doesn't matter because this light rifle doesn't exist. So this was the Dreamcast version. Now I can tell you, if you are interested in buying one of those light rifles, how much you have to expect to pay on sites like eBay, for instance. And the prices for those light rifles are between 30 to 100 US dollars, and for 100 US dollars people ask this price for completely sealed versions of this controller. I personally think $100 is a little too steep, so I would recommend don't pay more than $80 on a complete sealed version. Today they are uncommon, but they are not that rare, those controllers. Maybe someday in the future they may become highly collectible or anything, but right now they are not too expensive and not too hard to find. This was the prices, and basically at last, would I recommend those light rifles, yes or no? And like I already mentioned before, I would actually recommend those light rifles to fans of light gun games, then to collectors or fans of unique slash obscure controllers, and lastly of course to video gamers, to video game collectors who collect everything like myself, for instance. And in the end, I still think they are cool. You don't get a lot of games to use those light rifles, but in the end I think they are pretty cool. And you get the best home arcade experience that you can get of the games, House of the Dead 3 and the Silent Scope games. Yeah, basically we are now at the end of my review of the Sniper Scope and the Stealth Scope, both light rifles which were released for the original Microsoft Xbox. I really hope you enjoyed the show. Maybe see you next time. Take care. Bye.
I received information of the enemy. What's your next move? Understood. Leave the remains to me. Wipe them out from the helicopter. Good luck. Terrorists have kidnapped the president's daughter and are hiding in the stadium. We can't identify them from here. Go and search for them. Over. Calm down, everyone. The criminals are hiding somewhere. Wow, what great action! Don't shoot innocent people! Don't shoot innocent people! Don't shoot innocent people! Wow!
It's all good.
Watch out! The enemy is going to shoot! The heads up! Getting him some hot look. Oh no! Don't shoot innocent people! You've lost your touch. You are great. We secured the president's daughter, but they caught the president and have gone.